Good.
All right. The story that I'm reading is called Jennifer's Walk. One day, Jennifer wanted to take a walk through the fields all by herself. So her mommy gave her an apple for Arable the horse and said, "Now, Jennifer, try not to frighten the sheep," and kissed her goodbye. Jennifer took her teddy and set out. And this is where she went. She went across the big sunny lawn, past the vegetable garden and the fruit trees. The air smelled like pears for dessert and hornets buzzed all over the grass. "Hornets won't bother you, Teddy, if you don't bother them," Jennifer said. She went right up to the hole in the old stone wall, but she didn't go through because the spider's web stretched from one side to the other. "It looks just like the big wheel on my tricycle, Teddy, and no one's torn it, not even the dog," said Jennifer. She climbed over the wall so she wouldn't tear the web either. "I'm not afraid of spiders unless they're too big," she said, "and this spider isn't even at home." Now Jennifer was in a field where the high grass went whoosh when she passed, and the yellow black-eyed Susans grew as tall as her shoulders and sometimes flew away. "That's not a flower, that's a yellow butterfly," Jennifer laughed. A woodchuck sitting up on its hind legs popped right into its hole when it saw Jennifer coming. When Jennifer looked inside, all she could see was smooth, cool dirt. "That's a woodchuck house, Teddy, and that's our house right over there." She lifted Teddy high up to see. "We won't get lost as long as we can see our house," said Jennifer. In a corner of the field stood old Arable the horse. Jennifer took a bite of Arable's apple to make sure it was good, and Teddy took an even larger bite. But there was still some left for Arable. Arable's lips were hot and rough like the tongue of Jennifer's cat and very sticky. "Ooh," said Jennifer, wiping her wet hands on her overalls. Jennifer climbed through a wooden fence into the field where the sheep were nibbling grass. Their collar bells tinkled when they turned their heads to look at her. "Remember not to frighten the sheep, Teddy," Jennifer said, but after a minute she jumped up and down and shouted "Shoo!" as hard as she could, so that some of the sheep ran away and their bells tinkled louder than ever. Then Jennifer stood very quietly for a long time, listening to the bells ring, because the sound made her happy, like Christmas and icicles or birthdays, or anything especially nice. Then Jennifer started to run down the hill, past the big purple thistles that were too prickly to pick. The baby lambs ran with her. At the end of the sheep field, she lifted Teddy high up in the air and showed him the roof of their house, way up the hill. "We're far away, but we're not lost at all," said Jennifer. Jennifer peeked into an old barn that had lost part of its roof. It smelt of hay and lots of dust. A grey and white kitten came running round the corner and rubbed against Jennifer's ankles. "Will you come for a walk with us?" Jennifer asked, but the kitten ran off after a field mouse. Now Jennifer came to a brook where a little green frog sat in the mud as still as a stone. "You can't hide from me, Mr. Frog," said Jennifer, but she whispered so he wouldn't hop away. A water bug with 4 long legs walked right up on top of the water without getting his feet wet. "I wish I could do that," said Jennifer. Under the bridge were tiny pebbles as round as marbles and bright brown leaves lying on the bottom, and sometimes her own reflection all wrinkled up. On the other side of the brook was Jennifer's favourite place, a cool little wood where the trees grew in rows and the ground was soft with pine needles that looked pink in the sun and smelled very sweet. At the end of the wood was a long white gate. "If we go through that gate, we'll be lost," said Jennifer. So she sat down right where she was and looked high up into the trees. She saw branches and more branches, and the long pine needles made patterns of green stars and spider webs. Sometimes the sunlight seemed to catch on the needle points and shine like tiny yellow drops. A squirrel looked down and scolded. A fly buzzed by close to Jennifer's ear. Then it was very quiet for a long time. At last Jennifer said, "Now, Teddy, it's time to go home." From the edge of the cool woods, Jennifer could see the roof of her house way up the hill. She crossed the little brook very quietly so as not to frighten the frog. She walked past the old barn where the kitten was fast asleep in the sunshine. She skipped by the purple thistles, and the lambs ran with her, and the bells rang and rang. Old Arable came over to ask for another apple. "I'm sorry, I have no more," said Jennifer, and she gave her a pat instead, right on her whiskery nose. The woodchuck was watching for them on top of the hill. He popped down into his hole again, but this time he let his nose stick out. And when Jennifer climbed over the old stone wall, she saw the spider sitting in the middle of his beautiful spider web. He was home again. And so was she.